Before I sort of introduce all our various speakers, I just want to, for a bit of housekeeping, say for people who have not joined before, where for these open meetings, they are recorded, and I heard the recording sound go on there. So if you don't wish to be recorded, obviously you don't have to. Then do leave the meeting. If you don't mind being recorded, but you don't want to have your name or video on screen, please make arrangements in your settings so that so you can do that. And of course, for the purpose of recording is so that we can then use that to share for future use, and also help facilitate the work that local authorities involved in the network and also schools now are doing, so we can work together. So I hope that's clear to everyone. And I've got, I want to thank Sarah, Sian, and Maggie from City of Sanctuary, who've got if there are any more admin points I should be saying at this point. Nope. Good. Right. In that case, as I say, it's a real pleasure to host this meeting, because certainly in my experience, my role leading refugee policy in Lewisham, from the very outset, schools and schools communities have been at the heart of pushing the public services, including councils, to make the areas that they represent genuinely places of sanctuary for the community. And we're very proud in Lewisham, where we as a council have been accredited as a council of sanctuary by the movement, but we also have many schools involved, and one in St Mary's Church of England Primary School has been at the forefront of the work. For example, they've pushed us as a council, no recourse to public funds, and brought people from the community and how we can for people lived experience and how we can improve our services. They've also campaigned for citizenship fees to be removed for children, and they are and they're also part of welcoming our refugees in Lewisham. So that's an example. I think it's cross-generational, schools, pupils, teachers, parents, all involved in really adding value to the sanctuary movement. So I don't think we could be a genuine place of sanctuary without our schools. So it's a real pleasure today to bring that together and learn from those, from a local authority background, from schools background, what's being done really well and what we can all do to encourage more of our local authorities and schools to work together on the principles of sanctuary. So that's my sort of my own personal sort of intro to this, but I want to quickly just go through the list of speakers we've got today. So we've got firstly Sarah Truitt, who is just trying to get my whole list up here. So who's going to who's a lead for Schools of Sanctuary at City of Sanctuary, and explain what a school of sanctuary is for those who want a proper definition. And then we've then got a sort of group of presentations from people around the country explaining how it works in their areas. So we've got Anna Turnbull, who's the MEAS manager, which is Minority Ethnic Achievement Service at Wirral Council. We've got Owen Evans from Cardiff at the EMTAS Closing the Gap Officer, that's Cardiff Council. And then from Brighton Hove, we've got a double presentation from Angie Lynn from the local sanctuary group, and also Sarah Bellina from the council. And finally, last but not least, Natalie Stables, who's the head of service at the Salford Ethnic Minority and Traveller Achievement Service in Salford Council. So I'm going to, at this point, hand over to Sarah to give us our definition. Sarah.
Great. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see you all. I'm going to be doing a short presentation, so I'm just going to share that now. Hopefully you all can see that. I think if you're here today, you probably do know what City of Sanctuary is, but I always generally start my presentations with this slide to kind of just give a picture of what we are. We're a national movement about welcome and belonging. And so we work with all kinds of institutions across communities and schools. I feel sort of privileged to be working in that space to help schools become more inclusive places. So why do we need schools of sanctuary? I always like to kind of start our discussion about what is a school of sanctuary about with this discussion. And that's there are many reasons for it. There is, of course, the global context. There are more people on the move right now than there have been since World War II. UNHCR's latest figures from June estimate that about 82.4 million people have been forcibly displaced. Now, the vast majority of those remain internally displaced within their own countries, but that still means there are a lot of people who are crossing borders. We also have a context within the UK, which means that we have a series of hostile policies that have been put forward by the government to kind of dissuade people from coming here and staying here. And there's, in conjunction with that, and a lot of those policies are fueled by a lot of the inaccurate rhetoric and misinformation, frankly, that's put out by some of the popular press about why and how people come here. So we feel like it's very important that part of what we do with Schools of Sanctuary is to educate about why people are on the move and why they come to the UK. It's also, we consider really important at the community level, in the local level, because we feel like Schools of Sanctuary, by fostering education about why people are arriving into communities and how they've come to be there, does a lot to promote community cohesion. And we feel like it's an important, it's like another tool for areas to learn about and share about why people are on the move. And at the individual levels, we think that Schools of Sanctuary is important because it helps promote the specific needs of new arrivals. It helps teachers, staff, heads, local education services understand better their particular needs, tailor EAL provision accordingly, and make sure they're adequately supported. And all of that's to the end goal of having students that can thrive in schools and communities. So that's a little bit about why we need them. But what is a School of Sanctuary? So this is kind of what our definition is. It's basically essentially a place of welcome for all. So it's, you know, for new arrivals, but also for people who are living in the community to understand why new people might be coming into the area. So a School of Sanctuary teaches about why people are on the move. What is migration? Why people seek asylum? What do those terms mean? What does it mean to be a refugee? A School of Sanctuary also celebrates the fact that UK is a place where people have come for many hundreds of years to rebuild their lives after fleeing war and persecution, and that we see our society as being enriched by the arrival of new people, and that all of us can benefit by having new cultures meet and come into the UK. And a School of Sanctuary is also a place that supports and makes sure that every student is seen and that their background is celebrated and their cultural traditions are included in the school. So that's sort of the what we would sort of see as the framework for what is a School of Sanctuary. So how does a School of Sanctuary become recognized as a school of sanctuary? I think for those of you who are familiar with City of Sanctuary, you know that we have a sanctuary award process that we use across all of our streams. And this award process, we use three kind of main steps. And the first one is learn. And in that instance, we ask an institution, and in this case, a school, to learn about what it means to seek sanctuary. So that means learning about the terminology, learning about what are some of the factors that lead people to cross borders, and what is the reality of seeking asylum in the UK in terms of how many are actually arriving, why they come, where they come from. So it's a learning stage. The second aspect of it is about embedding, and that's looking at policies, procedures, your welcome practices. It's about looking at pretty much every side of the school framework to sort of think, how can we make our school welcoming and reflective of being a School of Sanctuary? So that's taking really practical action, and that can be everything from looking closely at your EAL provision. It could be about making sure that you have students that are identified as welcome buddies. It could be about making sure that you provide linkages. It's about looking at your curriculum to make sure that you're finding appropriate spaces and places where you can talk about migration and asylum. Could I just ask if to put yourself on mute if you're not on mute, because I'm hearing a little bit of background noise. Okay, hopefully none of you are hearing that as well. So the final step for any Sanctuary Award recipient is also to talk about sharing their award and sharing the learning that got them to the place of the award. So that means talking about your best practice. It means sharing it on social media. It means talking in your community. It may mean talking to your local counselors or other people who are participating to kind of tell them about your success and why it was important for your school to get involved. So that's sort of the overarching framework. And then for each of those steps, we've actually outlined specific criterion to help schools be able to define their process. They're here, it's on the slide. It's a bit dense. I appreciate it's a lot to read. I'm not going to go through each one because we don't really have time in this forum to do it, but we will send this on to you later so you can take a look at it and sort of understand. But what we've tried to do is kind of create a set of criteria that helps every school think through what they do and so that they can best embed those 3 principles that we talked about. I'm just going to share a very short video that UNHCR made a few years ago about a school in Gloucestershire that became a school of sanctuary, because I think it does a really nice job in speaking to a range of, from pupils to students to staff, about why it was so important to become a school of sanctuary. So I'm going to share this now. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Can you hear the sound? I just realized I might not have clicked the share sound. Can you hear? Okay.
When I came here, I feel a bit like sad, and I feel a bit scared as well. And now I'm feeling so different. I'm feeling so happy now.
A sanctuary school is a school where we want children to know that they are safe, especially as they've come from places where they haven't been safe. We're very fortunate to have staff as well who speak the languages, and we make a conscious effort to try and do that so that they can be naturally working alongside the children, but giving them a little bit of help when they need it.
Try to make it more attractive to the listener. So let's say, we birds are always quarreling.
When I came here, I didn't know any English, but now I know everything.
What are you going to do this weekend, Susanna?
I'm going to watch TV.
You're going to watch TV. Good for you. Well done. Good question.
صار يعطونا دروس إلي ولزوجتي، يعني بحيث إنه يحسسونا إنه ما في شيء إنه صعب، يعني كل شيء بينحل هون، والناس كلها يعني هون طيبين، ما يحسسونا إنه كانوا غرب نحن ولا.
Everybody's my friend. Everybody's the same for me. So I feel so happy because everybody's my friend.
Muted, Sarah.
Yeah, I muted myself. Okay, well, so that just gives you a little bit of a sense of what a school of sanctuary looks like, you know, sort of on the ground. And hopefully you found that inspirational. I think it's just a lovely story of how Mohammed learned to feel welcome in a school, and that's exactly the intent of the Schools of Sanctuary project. I'm just gonna. So a couple frequently asked questions. I'm just gonna share this information. We do not charge an application fee for schools to go through this process at City of Sanctuary UK. We want to make it accessible and open to everyone. That does mean it's, you know, we always have capacity issues, and we're always working with our local groups to support them to be able to do it. And we're really thrilled, and you'll hear more about what some of the local authorities have been doing to be able to implement it and roll it out to their schools. We often get questions about what types of schools of sanctuary is for, i.e., do you need to have refugee pupils in your schools to go through this process? And this project is open for everyone. So we have schools within the network that may have or do not have any pupils from different backgrounds than white British. But this is, we have schools, very urban, diverse schools with dozens and dozens of languages. We have schools that have a large cohort of new arrivals in their community. So this is really for any size, type of school. We think that the values that are taught in the process of becoming a school of sanctuary are really valuable ones for any school. The accreditation process, usually we would say takes a sort of full academic year, kind of at a minimum, for a school to look through its procedures and policies to go through it. And the award lasts for about 3 years. And then there's usually an accreditation, a re-accreditation process that goes through. I do just want to make a note that obviously we're very cognizant of the fact that over the last several years, schools have been incredibly stressed by the COVID-19 situation and all the challenges that's thrown up in terms of remote learning and support to pupils. So we've taken a very flexible approach in terms of how we're going through the accreditation process, and recognizing that sometimes, we might not do as many in-person visits as it might not be appropriate. But we are just trying to recognize and not add another set of strict criteria, make it a difficult process for schools to engage in, but give them something hopeful and aspirational to work towards. So those are some of the frequently asked questions. And then just quickly, a couple brief ideas before we move on to the real heart of today's discussion, which is hearing from local authorities themselves and how they work with schools of sanctuary. Just some initial ideas on what you can do as a local authority to promote schools of sanctuary. So we're going to be hearing from some great councils across the country and what they're doing and what it's meant to them to implement schools of sanctuary. But also, just at a simple practical level, we'd encourage you to think about encouraging your schools to sign up to our schools of sanctuary events. We've been hosting a regular series of webinars on what is a school of sanctuary, partnering with organizations like Refugee Week to give ideas to schools about how they can celebrate Refugee Week. We do a termly newsletter. We have a JISC mailing list where we share resources and ideas fairly frequently. We'd encourage you to kind of look at your education team's strategy and see if there are spaces in that strategy where you could promote and encourage schools of sanctuary. And, please do reach out to your local City of Sanctuary group if there's one nearby, or reach out to us at City Sanctuary UK to talk about how we could collaborate and support you to think about ways to implement schools of sanctuary. So I'm going to close up now here, but we have a whole range of resources to learn more about schools of sanctuary. We have a website that's built up. It's got a whole video library, as well as all our sort of previous event recordings. We regularly post on Twitter and Facebook. We have a newsletter, which will be dropping later this week. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at that if you're interested in learning more and seeing some of the great activities that schools across the network are doing to promote sanctuary, and connect with us. I expect she's probably already done it, but I will do it. If not, Megan probably has dropped in my email contact details. I'd love to hear from you about it. All right, so I'm going to stop now, turn back over to Kevin to go on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Sarah, and Megan for your work in supporting the schools of sanctuary. It's just so inspiring as that video is, particularly just seeing the difference, that sort of culture of welcome and all that practical support that the community are giving to each other there. Our schools should be at the forefront of this. So it's really, really heartwarming to see that. And also thank you for putting together all those resources on the website and elsewhere. So I hope people attending today are able to sort of use some of that to take the word out. But now we're going to move on to some specific experiences and what we can learn from that. So I'm going to start with Anna from Wirral. From Wirral Council. So Anna, do you want to tell us a bit about your... Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Anna Turnbull. I'm just going to share my screen. I do have let me just see screen. Share. It's a bit different to what I'm normally used to. Hopefully you can see my shared screen and my PowerPoint. I'm going to tell you a little bit about MIAS, the Minority Ethnic Achievement Service, and what we've been doing in Wirral to support our schools to achieve School of Sanctuary status. We are a small team, and originally we were an EAL, English and Additional Language team, based in the council supporting all schools. Things have moved on. We're now a traded service, and we support all schools with School of Sanctuary. As you can see, we have a number of staff, some with speaking different languages as well, and this has supported. Okay, I'm just going to move you over. Here's a list of our schools, which is also shared on the School of Sanctuary website. And this is our celebration, which goes at the end of the academic year, where some schools are presenting and receiving their award. And that's Jeff, who's talking from City of Sanctuary, and our mayor attended. We make a big deal out of achieving School of Sanctuary for all our schools. We've now got 30 schools of sanctuary on Wirral, and considering we only have about 100 schools on Wirral, I think that's brilliant. Okay, we have a programme of support for our schools that runs through the academic year. So now we're in September, and I'm planning our School of Sanctuary information session, which this year we're opening out to Holton schools, actually, because we've got a collaboration going on with them, but we open it out to all our Wirral schools, and they attend and they achieve, they receive information about what it's all about and how to achieve the award. During the months of November, December, January and February, we give some direct support to schools. Schools who wish to have this support can be supported with assemblies, workshops, cultural sessions, or we can just direct them to the information and they can do it themselves. March, we usually have a catch-up School of Sanctuary drop-in session. For those who are really want to complete during that academic year, then we have advice about presenting evidence for the award. This year we had 4 schools achieve School of Sanctuary status, which, considering lockdown, is not too bad. And their evidence was actually mainly electronic this year. For the first time ever, most of the evidence came in that format, which was brilliant to see and actually really useful for us, because it had to be really clearly presented. Instead of leafing through folders, it was really useful. So April and May, we usually support our schools with refugee visitors. So we do have a small number of Syrian families who arrived with the Syrian resettlement programme. And some of our Syrian ladies, actually, not gentlemen, have really good English and have been prepared to share their own experiences. We provide support, because I think it's not fair to allow these refugees to go in and talk about their own experiences unsupported. So we are always with them, and we only present to small groups of never the whole school. So it's a small class group, and those children share what they found out with the rest of the school. Obviously, June is Refugee Week, and we provide lots of information and support for our schools. We do have social media, so we share everything on social media, and lots of schools follow us on those accounts. And the end of June, we request evidence for that academic year. Schools may not complete in one academic year. We do have several schools who feel they need a little bit longer. I've only ever sent back one school's evidence saying it's not quite enough. Usually we support them enough so they know exactly what is expected and what they need to produce. So some of the schools do need a bit more time, and that's fair enough, that's up to them. But we have a rolling programme, so that if they don't do it in one year, they can always complete the next year. And our School of Sanctuary Awards ceremony, you saw the picture at the beginning of my presentation. This happens in July, so it's all very speedy. When we're looking at the evidence, there's a small team of us from the MIAS team, but also we have some sanctuary seekers involved, and also we involve the local mosque, the imam from the local mosque, okay, to review the evidence. So this is just a snapshot of some of the evidence from our schools this year. So we asked them to submit evidence under learn, embed and share, 3 main principles. So one school submitted this plan for Refugee Week, and what we really liked about this was it covered the whole school. You could see progression, and they're all learning about sanctuary seekers in different ways, and it's very practical, it's very visual, and they really thought about the outcomes that they want as well. So happy to share this with you. Embed, this is just an example from one school of what they did to embed the concepts of welcome, safety and inclusion. And this is a year 5 class, and they came up with little ideas about their own sanctuary space in shoeboxes, which is fabulous. And this is the summary here is the summary that the school provided, okay, giving demonstrable evidence of what their children had achieved and how it impacted on them. So share, some of the evidence from share. We received some pictures and some schools tagged us in on Facebook, on Twitter. This is the Wirral Meas, at Wirral Meas. You can follow us on Twitter, and the hashtag School of Sanctuary was there as well. We always copied everybody in. So I'm going to leave it there, but if you have any questions, I think there'll be time at the end to ask some questions. And I hope for us, it's more than the reason we got into School of Sanctuary as an EAL service is because schools were actually asking for it. So in the SMSC, they really, really enjoyed the fact that School of Sanctuary supported the spiritual, moral, social, cultural development of all their children, whilst making their school a welcoming place. And many schools find that it actually fits with their own school ethos and own school motto. And it certainly fits with the MEAS ethos and what we want to do. We want to make sure that all children who arrive in this country, who are learning English, who maybe come from different backgrounds, we want them to achieve their full potential. So that's it from me. Anything else you can ask me at the end.
Yeah, Anna, as somebody just said in the chat, Sarah said in the chat, that really was very inspirational. It was an excellent presentation. I was, wow, bowled over by the number of schools you got that are already signed up, and I'm really impressed at how inclusive it is for other schools to bring them in, but also so much good examples there. So learn, embed, share. You've definitely not done a lot of sharing there, so really appreciate that. Obviously, that's the whole point about having people like yourself speak today, is that people can stay in touch, as these are networks we've got. So it's not just about us coming together today, but keep building those relationships going forward. So if people want to get in touch, Anna, you've put your details there, and they can be facilitated through the schools network as well. And as of today, we will have questions after the presentation. So it may well be that your question might be answered by somebody else, but do hold any comments or questions you've got for the question and answer session. And we've also got the chat as well, but bear in mind, not everybody can keep it on top of that, certainly not myself, that's for sure. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to our second speaker and presenter, and that is Owen Evans from Cardiff. Owen.
Hello, bore da, good afternoon. Actually, it's not from Cardiff. Thanks for the invitation today to come and share what we do here in Cardiff. I have to say, following on from Anna's presentation, I do need to give credit to the fact that that the City of Sanctuary network exists, and the work that Sarah and Megan do in regard to having their network meetings, because I learned a lot from them. So for Cardiff, we started off a little bit in the dark. We'd heard of School of Sanctuary. I work for the Education Directorate within the council, and it was just happened to be an interest of mine. So I do work for a similar organisation to Anna, which is the Ethnic Minority and Traveller Achievement Service, working within Welsh medium schools, English medium schools, and other responsibilities within the LA. But we started off quite organically, if you like, doing it with one school at a time and piloting it and trying to understand what the process looked like. And then obviously, as we became more interested in it, we could see the potential of it. And to go back to Sarah's presentation at the beginning, for all of those reasons, that is why we want all our schools to become schools of sanctuary. So we had to have a look at it, if you like, in regard to how would I develop it from one person within the Education Directorate of Cardiff Council? How could we roll it out? Was it going to be sustainable? Did we have capacity within the local authority? Or what did we need to do in order to make it achievable? So I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with my boss and explain to her that I think this was something that our schools would benefit from. It was something that I felt that a lot of our schools were already doing, but maybe not going for accreditation. There was a lot of good work already there. So it was a way to recognise that, if you like. And that's what we did for 2 years or so. But then, having joined the meetings that Sarah put together, I did then meet with other people from local authorities, and I met with Jill from Liverpool. She also became a guest speaker to one of our network meetings, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. And now what we've done is a similar model to what Anna was explaining. So I'm fortunate that I have a team around me, and we are responsible within the LA. We've got that capacity to develop this for our schools. So we have come up with a similar model to Anna, where we offer them guidance, resources, training, whether that's staff training, governor training, workshops with young people. So we tap into other sectors of the organisation. It could be our youth service, it could be our cohesion teams that supply that. So it could be work with year 5 and year 6 to produce things like, what is propaganda workshops, that kind of thing. And as part of that suite, we've also linked in with our third sector organisations here in Cardiff, those that work specifically with asylum seekers and refugees, to get them on board also. So there's a few things that they will support us with. People obviously that attend their organisations, we're asking them to come forward, maybe to support schools with training sessions, but also to ask them to become volunteers, paid volunteers, hopefully, as part of the accreditation process, the visiting school process, etc. We're also working with other schools that have got recognition to make sure that we have that school to school working. So I think schools do listen really well to each other, not always as well as what they do from the local authority. So I think that is something that we need to roll out. So I think that has come a long way from me having an interest in it to us now in Cardiff, the education sector agreeing that this is a focus for us as an LA, that we are allowed to commit time to it and resources to it, that we have this suite that we can present to schools to support them. And then we have a timeline very similar to Anne's, ideally the beginning of the academic year in September, to submit by June, to have then a little bit of a shingding and a celebrate in July. So that's how we think we can do it within our Cardiff LA. I think it's a sustainable model. It's supported by our education directors, and it supports a lot of the council's initiatives as well. So, and Welsh Government initiatives. So I would say Cardiff is a child-friendly city. So that's a UNHCR programme. It ties in nicely with that. And the cohesion team, which is a different directorate to education, are linked in with that. It also ties in with what Welsh Government are advocating, which is that Wales becomes a nation of sanctuary. So it fits in really nicely within that agenda for schools across Wales. It also, as Sarah was saying, ties in with a lot of the community cohesion initiatives that are currently ongoing. So in Wales, we have the Hate Crime in Schools project that's going across Wales at the moment. It fits in nicely with that. It fits in with the Professor Charlotte Williams report that was commissioned by Welsh Government recently with 52 recommendations for schools. So, I think when schools look at those things, it's not necessarily just recommendations for schools, but it's for Welsh Government also. It ties in that if you do these things for School of Sanctuary recognition, it actually fits the wider remit as well. I would say it also fits into Welsh Government's rights, respect, equality, challenging bullying guidance that was issued in November 2019. I think if you make your school a place of welcome, then the challenges that you face in regard to hate crime, hate incidents, harassment, bullying, etc., with more understanding, will get fewer and fewer. So there are a lot of initiatives that could be, that this would support, if you like. So I suppose if you were looking to do this within your schools, you could go to the local LA, or the LA could look at where it would fit best. For us, it's within education, but it could be that you would have a lead within your community cohesion team or your well-being team. It doesn't necessarily have to be the lead within education, but that's the way we've done it in Cardiff, and it's working really well. And then as Cardiff, we also currently chair something called MELIA, which is a minority ethnic achievement local authority group. It doesn't make sense as an acronym, but there we go. And we chair that, and I've shared that then widely across Wales. So there are similar people to me in post across Wales, across all 22 local authorities. They've had the blurb, they've had me nagging, they've had my, the good practice that's gone on in Cardiff, and they are keen to get on board as well. So because maybe they don't have the capacity within their LA to do the same as what we're doing, we're offering a little bit of a helping hand, if you like, if they need support at any point, if they need to share our resources, if they need support in regard to how do you go about the accreditation process, could you do it with us for the first time, for example. We're offering that until they are well established within their own local authorities. And we also have Hayley, who is our Wales coordinator. She's offering that as well. But if we can do it with neighbouring LAs, etc., or now via Teams or Zoom, we're offering that support so that we can try and build across local authorities. And I know Sian is on the call. She was part of that initially when she was the Wales coordinator as well. So that's how we've rolled it out. I think that's how we can make it sustainable. And I have to say, one of the big successes was that we had a little School of Sanctuary network group for our schools just to have a chat and share experiences. That's become a little bit of a monster, but in a good way. We now have our schools inspectorate that attend that, which is Estin, the equivalent of Ofsted in England. They attend it, so it's on their agenda, so they'll be looking at it when they visit schools. We've also got members from Welsh Government attend this network meeting, and other interested parties from across Wales. So it's really good to share. I think from the ground up, if you like. I can preach as much as I want, but when they see our guest speakers come along, share their experiences, share their videos, all of those things, it does inspire them to want to do it. So I think that's what we've done in Cardiff. We've got a plan today. There's 5 within my team that have been challenged to try and get as many as possible done this academic year. So there's a bit of a competition, if you like, of how many we can support in order to be accredited by the end of the academic year. And just slightly different to what Anna was suggesting there, what we've also asked is, obviously tied in with COVID, because we couldn't go out and visit schools and do the accreditations last year, that they consider putting all their evidence electronically from now on, maybe like a PowerPoint, so that each year group has a lead within their school that drops things into the PowerPoint as and when they go along. And then it becomes easier and more manageable 3 years down the line when you need to revisit that school. All their evidence is then stored on the same PowerPoint, and it doesn't become one person's responsibility. So if you've got a gap in year 2 or a gap in year 8, then you need to kind of challenge that person in year 2 or year 8, or support that person in year 2 or year 8. But I think that will work well for us when we come around to accrediting them, hopefully lots and lots of schools. But I think the key area is identify a lead within the LA that is supportive, and then they can try and manage and maneuver within the LA about how can it be practical and sustainable within that LA setting. There are always people keen to do it. So I would suggest going along that route as a starting point. So I think that's all from Cardiff, really.
Right, well, that's plenty from Cardiff. Thank you so much, Owen. And there were sort of 2 points I sort of picked up from that, which I think is very helpful. And we're trying to develop this in Lewisham. I mean, we're learning from all this too. I mean, and they're both around the same theme, which is about coordination. And I was really impressed, firstly, about what you were saying, Owen, and it's really important that we're all in different places internally. The way we operate as local authorities and the way we operate with our schools will vary from place to place. And as you said towards the end there, absolutely, you've got to look at what works best in your authority for who's going. You do need leadership. And in Lewisham, for example, we've got a borough of sanctuary manager. He's on deserved leave today, so he's not with us, but he's the sort of the conduit to make sure the right officers are different depending which themes of sanctuary we're doing. So that's the first point, I think. And the other thing which I was very impressed with is that role, that unique role that local authorities have to bring people and organizations together, whether it's obviously the schools, but you mentioned also the local third sector and groups within the Cardiff area, but then how it ties in with complementary agendas for other public service authorities, and then you've got Wales and you've got the Welsh government, which is fantastic. It's a bit different in England, but we certainly, if you're in a large urban area like London, we've got our neighbouring boroughs and we've got the Mayor of London. So it's how can we be proactive in bringing it together. And last but not least, of course, is as you rightly said, Owen, is that we don't know the answers. We're learning, yes, as local authorities, but we're coordinating and providing that voice. So allowing the voices from our schools community to come through as well. So lots there, lots of food for thought, certainly for me and others. So thank you for that. So I'm now going to move on to a sort of a duo here from Brighton Hove. I've got Angie Lynn from the Sanctuary Group there. I think that's Sanctuary on Sea, if I'm not mistaken. And also I've also got Sarah Berliner from the council. So if I hand over to one or both of you to take the virtual stage.
Sarah's going to start.
I'm going to start. Hello, yes, I'm Sarah Berliner. So I'm the team leader for EMAS, which is the Ethnic Minority Achievement Service in Brighton and Hove. But what I wanted to say first of all is the way that we have been able to work in Brighton and Hove, bearing in mind we're a very small city, a very diverse city, and there are some real benefits to the smallness in terms of the location of all the schools and the way in which the schools work really closely together. And I think it's really important that our work with Angie, who's been the lead for this on the part of Sanctuary on Sea, which is the name of our local sanctuary network in the city, is that Angie has harnessed the enthusiasm and the goodwill of the city, and she's brought that to the education aspect of the schools of sanctuary, and she's brought that to the council. And with Sam Beale, who's the PSE lead, they have totally embedded it through our offer through the PSHE aspects of the council. So not every school in the council comes across by any work that they do about refugees, about Refugee Week. It's threaded through all the LA programme and all the LA information that we give out. So there's a constant awareness raising. And the part of EMAS, which I'll talk about in a bit more, we are still unusually a very full-on operational service with teachers, bilingual assistants, home liaison officers, teaching assistants, and we're out in all of our schools a lot of the time. So we've got a very roots up approach to being able to support schools, and the EMAS role is less strategic in the sense than I've heard from other local authorities. But I will talk about that in a minute, and I'm going to hand over. There was another thing. I wanted to wholeheartedly agree with Anna
in that everything Brighton and Hove are doing, it's about the individual children and the well-being, having children that feel welcome and safe, but also equally children that know how to welcome, know how to create safe environments, and know how to respect and value each other, and feel comfortable and happy about difference, and that difference is a positive thing. So we'll always keep the child at the centre of everything we do. And I think whenever we're struggling and we're thinking, well, what should we do about this? We always go back to what's best for the children. And that's how we focus things. I'll hand over to Angie.
Thank you, Sarah. Really, we couldn't do Schools of Sanctuary in Brighton and Hove without the support of the council. When we got the scheme going originally, I contacted my old colleague Sam Beale, because I'm a retired teacher. I had the pleasure of working with Sam back in the day. And we worked together to frame a local version of the Schools of Sanctuary pack, which we thought would be attractive to schools and not overly onerous. So that was written in partnership, and it was advertised through the established PSHE networks that were there already, run by the Equalities and Anti-Bullying Service, which is Sam heads up. So the launch for that and further training events and network meetings have been organised by the council in partnership with ourselves at Sanctuary-on-Sea. And then we rewrote the PSHE curriculum, which goes out to all schools. We rewrote that curriculum framework to incorporate further teaching and learning about refugees, and to articulate that through that framework. So Sanctuary-on-Sea have been regularly invited to PSHE network meetings for the primary schools, separate network meetings for secondary schools, to promote the Schools of Sanctuary programme. So we're always there just touching that balloon up. The legwork going into schools is mostly done by myself as a volunteer at Sanctuary-on-Sea, but we have the invaluable presence in schools all the time of Sarah's colleagues working in the EMAS team, and of course Sam Beale's colleagues working as the PSHE teachers. So all of those links are there for us to touch on when we want a picture of what a school is like and what support it's likely to need. We've also been included in the anti-racism training that is currently going forward with the development of an anti-racist strategy for the LEA. So we've been invited to those to showcase our work and encourage participation. Schools submitting evidence for an award do so through the PSHE service, and we make a joint assessment. We at Sanctuary-on-Sea make a joint assessment with the council and with our partners with lived experience, and the certificates we issue therefore have the council's logo on alongside the Sanctuary-on-Sea logo. And we work closely with EMAS, as Sarah's going to tell you a bit more about in a minute. So really, I think the partnership between paid staff at the council and our voluntary volunteers at from Sanctuary-on-Sea is a model which we hope to be more sustainable than our cash-strapped council having to cover all the expense of running the Sanctuary-on-Sea programme. One of the worries that I have is that as services increasingly become traded to schools, they may not choose, particularly in a predominantly all white parts of our city, they may not choose to go for a sanctuary programme if they have to pay out money for it that they can see other calls for. So the fact that we're cheap actually can help. Sarah.
So one of the first things that we always offer a school that wants to do the City of Sanctuary, the qualification, is a diversity and equalities walk. And that involves somebody senior, a senior teacher from the EMAS team, senior teachers or teacher from the school, people with lived experience and of being a refugee, and a governor walking through the school. And we have a framework which we look for particular aspects and evidence of things that would be of value and add to what a school feels like as a school of sanctuary. But we also, within that, we take photographs and we provide evidence. We provide them with ways forward and things to do. And so much of the learning from that is about walking through the school and having those immediate reactions and having eyes that don't come from the school, eyes of a visitor who's had lived experience that can say how they feel about seeing the displays they see and whether it others them or makes them feel included. And it's so often the learning is so much about the act of the walk as well as the write-up that comes after. And then there's some recommendations that the school can choose to follow, and we will support them or signpost them to support for that. And that's a really good starting point because it's kind of like a critical friend. And it opens up the dialogue and it gets staff to know kind of the ethos that they're thinking about and where they want to be. So that starts. And I think at this point it would be really nice to say as well that we have actually introduced doing nurseries of sanctuary, and Angie has gone in and done training with some of our city nurseries. And we have done diversity walks as well in the nurseries. And so we're trying to move it on in that way because we have a wealth of nursery provision, and we're funded to work with nurseries, which is unusual. So we're in a very fortunate position. So anytime we can move something into the early years practice and nursery practice, we will. So that, and Angie's taken that on as well. So that's, and we've got some nurseries of sanctuary, which we're very proud of. So they're the diversity walk that we do. And that really is a great tool for learning what we should do next for the school. Just getting my notes back up. And as well as that, we've been working together on the guidance that's coming out about welcoming and supporting Seekers of Sanctuary, which we're going to have a launch event, and Angie has worked really hard with Sam. I've contributed to a document as well, and that launch event is coming up soon so that schools can think really in the breadth of what all of that means to them as a school. But I think what's really what allows us the privilege of this is being that small communities that we have. We can really talk to schools as a whole and get them all together in the room. So I can often get to talk to all the heads in Brighton and Hove, which I know is a real privilege and a good way of working. And I know Angie gets that opportunity too. Yes, and I think the way that we've managed to embed and put the schools of sanctuary within all of the PSHE policy and within all the work that my teachers, when they're in a school, they will recommend it to a school as something to do to be even better and to think about ways of making that school more welcoming and to add more challenge to their teachers about how they teach subjects around refugees. So for instance, I might question, if I was going into a year 6 class, a history line talking about the images on a line of history that they might have, or we might talk about different kinds of refugees that they could think about in terms of a history project that reflect and better and give better messages to children that they have in their class. So I think we're able to give them also a much more clear picture of who the children are in the city that we're thinking about,
another way we have of sharing practice is that all the write-ups, the submissions that schools put in as evidence for their Sanctuary Award are then posted on the council website, which all schools, all teachers have access to. So they've got a whole list of examples of projects that schools have done. And because, as Sarah said, we're a small city, we develop networks, they can share with each other, and I sometimes will facilitate those links. If a school is saying, well, we'd like to do a particular piece of work, but we're not quite sure how to go about it, I can say, well, so, you know, another school did something very similar, why don't you talk? And I can put them in touch with each other in that way. So we're developing peer support as well, and have hopefully some plans to extend that peer support. But that's kind of in its infancy, so I'm not going to say a lot more about that now.
I think we're done, aren't we, Angie?
I think we're done.
Well, thank you. That was plenty there, and so many different things that people pick up on this. So really appreciate that, Angie and Sarah. I mean, the sort of, again, sort of some of the lessons I'm trying to take away from it. So one is, particularly we had the two of you presenting there, but the reminder of its partnership, and how actually, you know, both of you in different ways saying you couldn't do one without the other, as it were, and the value they add to it, and of course the experience that, you know, people like Angie who've worked in school, teachers themselves, have got that schools connection, can go in there and support that. And it'll be different in each place in different parts of the country. So in Lewisham, our group comes from Citizens UK, and they were the ones getting helping to get parents who lived experience to tell their stories, and how we can change council services, but like changing councils, but also thinking about the other thing I picked up on was it's getting people working in schools, just like we accept council staff, to think about you know, the people they're interacting with, and then what they think in turn about what it means to be a refugee, what it means to come from somewhere else, and how that shapes how you communicate. So that was, yeah, so there's a couple of points I want to take away. So I really thank you both for what you're doing, and some great things going on in Brighton and Hove. I'm now going to move on to our last speaker. I've got Natalie, who is the head of service in Salford MTAS. And Natalie, if you want to tell us a bit more from your perspective. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Oh, sorry, good afternoon. Yeah, my name's Natalie. I'm also head of an MTAS service in Salford, which is sort of the left bank of Manchester, as it's known. A lot of what's been said in the meeting is what we do as well. So I don't want to sort of repeat it too much. We have a similar kind of programme that we run throughout the year, and you know, we have a growing number of schools of sanctuary. We started very, very small. Literally, I started with this literally about three and a half years ago. Went to a conference, heard somebody speak from the Manchester City of Sanctuary group, and I thought, this is absolutely brilliant. This is what Salford needs. You know, we are a changing city, a diverse city. Again, a little bit like what we mentioned about Brighton and Hove. Some areas, you know, very ethnic minority, and other areas not at all. We have, you know, unfortunately, some issues with hate crime. We have a bit of a far right presence as well in Salford, unfortunately. So for me, it was just had every single reason why we should be going for this as a city, actually, I felt. But I remember sitting at the conference thinking, right, well, I'm ahead of a service in education. I work with schools. We have a, relatively an okay team, but as capacity is limited, we're very, very busy. How can I grow this in my city? Because at this point, nobody else in the city was doing anything, probably hadn't even heard of it. So I did what I know best, and I started in the field that I know, which is schools. I approached the schools I knew well, the heads that were inclusive, the empathetic staff that I knew would go for it, and started to build up a network of schools. I was very, very keen to get some secondary schools on board as well, because for me, they're like the big fish in the city a little bit. And I knew that they will probably influence the influencers within the city, really, those, more powerful people. And we have got 2 secondary schools now that have got full accreditation, and we've got some more in the pipeline, as well as a number of primary schools. But what I then decided to do was, and again, what people have mentioned throughout the whole, all the meeting, is this very high profile event when schools are given their accreditation, and trying to invite as many senior people as possible, which I did, which obviously, the elected mayor, local councillors, heads of service from other services. I really wanted a presence, and the voluntary sector as well, to get them to see what was going on in schools, because I was very, very keen to try and promote this beyond schools. I knew I couldn't lead that myself. I haven't got the capacity to do that myself, but I wanted to try and get people in different areas on board to think, yeah, we could do this in our area. So as a result, on the first big event we did, we had quite a few elected members there, and after the event, they said, we've got to do more of this across the city. It's what we need, So basically, what's happened as a result of that, I am chairing at the moment a bit of a stakeholder group with a number of people on that group. So I suppose, I'm there with the education hat on, my education hat on. We've got elected members on there. We have got people from Salford City Leisure, that's all the sports, the swimming pools, all that kind of thing. We've got head of libraries. We've got public health, the CCG are sitting on that group. We've got some housing associations on as well. And basically, we are starting to scope out how we can grow this across the city. We also have sort of Q&As with the chief exec now and again, and I was basically, any opportunity I have to sort of mention sanctuaries, can we be a city of sanctuary? Are you interested? I always get that out there. And I've got a little bit of, I won't say it's a pledge from the chief exec, but he said he's interested. He wants to find out more. And, we're hoping that we would maybe become an official city of sanctuary at some point. I've also, so as a result of these sort of stakeholder meetings, we've had lots of conversations about how do we move forward? Do we write a strategy? Who's going to write the strategy? Where's the strategy going to fit? And so throughout the summer, I've been kind of looking at this and thinking, well, I could write a strategy. I've seen your strategy, Kevin. It's brilliant at Lewisham. It's a brilliant strategy. I've picked off, some strategies, and I must admit, Sarah and Megan and the team at City of Sanctuary really helped me with that. But then I was very aware that it was going to be too top heavy. It was going to be very council led. Even though we did have the voluntary sector on board, I felt that we did not have enough input from people who've got lived experience. Yes, we have some, because some of our elected members are actually ex-asylum seekers. But I felt quite uncomfortable with it. So in a way, we're rolling it back a bit at the moment, and we're going to go out and do a big consultation throughout October in Black History Month. We've got quite a lot of events going on across the city. And we've got different groups. We've got like a Black Lives Matter group. We've got different groups across the city. And so we're going to work with the cohesion team, the equality team, and we're going to really try and get the voice of those people with lived experience to say, if we had a strategy, what would you want in that strategy? What's going to be in there? And also what we do really want it to do as well is to fit in with, we have an equality strategy being launched October, we have an economic inclusion strategy, we have a poverty strategy in the city. Now, we have a number of strategies, and I didn't want it to be another huge strategy that just sits there. I would rather have a smaller strategy that sort of sits under another strategy. Well, that's the equality strategy. Well, across a lot of those strategies, actually. But it's about the action that comes from that as well, you know. So that, in a nutshell, is where we're at the moment. I've got a meeting next week with the head of Salford voluntary sector. We're going to organise a number of consultations. Now, originally, we were going to have some consultations in the day, and straight away we got feedback saying you've got to do it at the weekends as well. You've got to do it in the evenings. We can't just do it on Microsoft Teams because people can't access that. We need to look at Zoom. We need to look at face-to-face, you know. And, you know, I must admit, it's an extra bit of work for me, you know, but you know, I'm passionate about it. I believe in it. I can't lead all these streams, you know, but I'm trying to encourage other people to see the real importance of it and what I'm trying to do in my field in education. And that if we all do that more across the city, it can only help everybody. And I must just say as well that the situation with the Afghan situation, it has massively raised the profile. I mean, all of us that work in asylum refugees, for me, families coming from Eritrea and Sudan are just as desperately in need and always have been, but it's an opportunity where senior leaders, they're all saying, we are going to open our doors to the Afghans, you know. So again, you know, I'm going to use that, you know, in a good way. I'm not going to be ashamed of saying that, to push for this, to improve this work really across Salford. And really, I suppose that's all I need. That's all I've got to say at this moment in time. And if anybody wants to pick my brains of how that's going, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody and be totally honest about where we're on that journey. But I think we're going the right way. I think it might be a bit slower than I would like, but I think maybe it's better to do it slower and do it better than do it quick and it's not going to work really. So
Natalie, that was a really good insight into the work that you're doing individually, and how that, you know, you're picking up on the demand and the interest you've got there, and yeah, and you are on a journey. We're all on different sanctuary journeys in our different parts of the country, and it's not always easy, and you need willing people to work with you. I mean, a couple of points I want to pick up. One is, and I'm sure we'll come to this in the questions and answers, is about it's the message we take to the wider community and people who might be wary about that, and that's why sanctuary is so important, not just for those, you know, who need sanctuary, but for the wider community as well. Why it matters to them, it's better for everyone. The other bit, and obviously we can always talk about this outside meetings, is actually, we were talking, much of this meeting's been about how we help our schools, but you know, schools are part of you know, the broader movement and the roles that they can help in local authorities in improving our services to make them more sanctuary friendly, and the strategy. So, you know, we've got our own council strategy in Lewisham, which is about councils, about the role we play as a council in the wider sanctuary movement in Lewisham. But likewise, we're part of our, you know, our group, our sanctuary group in Lewisham is there to try and get more peoples and groups to sign up to and how they would implement sanctuary. So yeah, there's plenty there that's been done. And then one last point is that, again, different ways, it's that listening. So we did that. We had like events and various things in Lewisham way before we had our own sanctuary strategy. So yeah, you know, congratulations on what you're doing so far. But yeah,
it's hard work in a way. You know, it's harder work to do it that way. Because I know that this, you know, the asylum seekers will talk about their immediate needs, and why shouldn't they?
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that people have to understand that.
And you pick up more as you go along, and it just you know, it means more work, but it's worth it when you see the change it makes. So I really appreciate what you do. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Right, we've got a bit of space now for if people have got any sort of comments or questions for any of the people who've spoken so far. So I'm going to try and change my view so I can see everyone and in the chat. So if anybody wants, I think the easiest thing for me is if anybody can use the raise hand function, if you'd like to ask a question or say that. And if that doesn't work, then please put the question in the chat and I'll try and look out for it and read it out. So does anybody have any comments or questions?
Well, maybe everyone's thinking, I just wanted to say, as someone who has the privilege of working on Schools of Sanctuary for City of Sanctuary, just thank you so much to all the speakers today. And it's such a joy to hear what they do at the local level, because it so informs how we think about how we can provide that support. So we're really grateful. And I know there are lots of people who are on the call who are doing similarly wonderful things in their community and working with their councils. And just to say, we've captured this today, but I've gotten some great, examples coming to me just as we've been on this call. I know the LA network is going to be putting together a resource pack, so we could have a small section about some of these examples. So please keep that in mind, and hopefully Maggie doesn't mind me pitching for those, taking this opportunity to pitch for that now.
That's brilliant. Yeah, putting all these resources together, that's one of the benefits of having a network. So yeah, that's very welcome. Okay, I'm looking for hands or questions or comments or people all digesting it and thinking about what they want to do, but also if anybody's got any other insights and from their own areas and also challenges. I mean, I've got one that I wanted to raise, but I want to see if anybody else any questions first. And it was touched on particularly towards the end there with Natalie, and it really is this is the whole point I was making there about yes, we're in a sort of a place of agreement here, why Sanctuary is so good for the people who need it, but also the wider community. Now for me, it's an opportunity, and particularly in our schools, to promote, what does Sanctuary mean, and make people think about people coming from different backgrounds. And whether you might get, people have had any experience of any pushback, whether, that people saying, well, hang on a minute, why, and I'm being devil's advocate here, why some people getting special attention. And for me, it's not about that. Obviously, it's about quality for all and understanding. But how if people have faced challenges, how are people trying to overcome that? Because I think it's actually a useful challenge to have a school of Sanctuary, so that people say, what is this? Why are we doing this? And people, fair enough, ask that question, and let's actually have that engagement and why it matters so much. So has anyone got any examples that they want to of that challenge? I've come to Natalie. I mean, obviously you raised it, so I'll come to you first.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure how to put.
I saw your hand. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure to do a virtual hand on this. I'm only on Teams.
It's in reactions, I think. In reactions.
Oh, is it? Okay,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
Raise hand on that.
Yeah, on that. I mean, I was very aware of that, Kevin, when I started this, because I knew that there would be some kickback, and there's some head teachers who probably won't go for it now, still, because they're worried. Unfortunately, not many, but there's some. The main reaction I got was, are we going to get more asylum seekers as a result of having this initiative? Which my response would be, well, would that be a problem if you were? And then obviously discuss, have discussions around that. But even senior leaders in the council didn't really, we take a lot of asylum seekers in Salford. We take the second biggest across Greater Manchester. And there's political tensions about the government won't mandate other areas to take asylum seekers, So being aware of the political agenda sometimes in your local authority is not a bad thing. So I made it very clear that, it's about the movement is about, yes, it is about obviously opening up your local authority as much as you possibly can for resettlement schemes and for asylum seekers, etc. But if that's not possible at that time for whatever reason, it is about making sure that you are supporting the asylum seeking refugees the best you can, and also about that cohesion element of making sure that the rest of the population in your city has a greater awareness and empathy towards a knowledge about who asylum seeking refugees are. So I've had to talk about that actually, to get people to understand what it's about. And I don't know if anybody else has had that. I don't know. But I've certainly had to talk like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you maybe think about some of our local experience in Lewisham there, where we've had to sometimes make the case, oh, well, you always put refugees first in Lewisham and all that. Well, but then you have to humanize it. And so it's not giving people numbers. These are people, and tell their stories, and how, we've got a junior doctor helping from Damascus, helping in the vaccination program. They're adding something to our community. So it's not them and us and all the time. They are us. I keep saying that. So, a couple of our speakers back again. So I've got, I think Olwen, I think I saw you first, and I'll come to Angie. Olwen.
Well, hi. So I was just going to respond to your question, really. We haven't had specific challenges as such, but I think what I would say, we've had some, from a flip side to what the previous person was saying, we've had some families, minority ethnic families, feeling that the schools aren't doing enough to meet the needs of their children, if you like, from a cultural or diversity or an EAL or a WAL perspective. And I think when you talk them through, if it is a school that is a school of sanctuary, you can demonstrate to them, actually, this is what the school is doing, has been doing, and is continuing to do. I think then they can see how inclusive the school is. And I think that reassures the family that there is a lot of work going on, that asylum issues, refugee issues, inclusion issues are considered on a strategic level within the school. So I think in that respect, it's the flip side, not necessarily from, somebody opposing it, but people thinking that the schools aren't doing enough. So it's a great tool for that, to demonstrate the good work that schools do, but also maybe the challenge in Wales, very diverse areas, also very white Welsh areas. So I can only speak for Cardiff. It's having a conversation with those schools that never get any asylum seekers or refugees, and maybe a very small minority of families that come from a minority ethnic background. It's having a conversation with them to say how they can play their part. So we've tried to sell it as, when it's not a school of sanctuary for asylum seekers and refugees only, if you've got people with lived experience in your school, we're asking them to become schools of sanctuary for all their pupils. And obviously through that, we raise awareness of what asylum seekers are, what refugees are, and all of that the schools of sanctuary encompasses. So it's making it known that it's for all schools in all areas. You don't have to have asylum seekers, refugees within your school placements. It's about raising awareness so that they're in the know, so that they become more inclusive citizens as they grow and develop through the school system. So just wanted to say that's kind of two little different areas that we've worked on in the past.
That's really, really helpful. Thanks, Olwen, and that's a really good way of framing it too, I thought. So yeah, definitely. Angie.
I'd just like totally to endorse what Olwen has just said. When a school shows interest in the Schools of Sanctuary programme here, one of the first things that I do is offer them a whole staff training session, and we do try and make sure that it is a whole staff training session, that this is inclusive across the school, so that all the staff are aware of the up-to-date information about asylum seekers and refugees, that they've got the statistics, that they know how to access those, so that they are prepared to talk about, to debunk the myths that they will encounter. Nearly all the people that I've ever done my presentation for, when I do my little quiz, think that Europe takes more asylum seekers than anywhere else, than any other continent. So that's the first one to get rid of. And then within Europe, they think that the UK takes far more asylum seekers than it actually does. So we spend time debunking some myths. We spend time looking at how you can access accurate information. And I do raise to them the question that they may get some kickback once the asylum seekers welcome here poster goes up in reception. They need to make sure that whoever is sitting on reception knows how to deal with somebody who comes in and doesn't like it. So those are issues that I think do need to be addressed through the training that you offer to your schools to support them through the process.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Angie, because yeah, I think you know, as I say, there will be wariness, I think, from schools and elsewhere, just worried a bit about that pushback. But actually, it's an opportunity. It really is to actually, challenge and engage with the different, different viewpoints on this kind of thing. So no, that's helpful. And also in your tag team, I've got Sarah.
I think what we've had more of an issue with, and it's in the wider realm as well, is the local press having comments in the local press, and it's making sure that the communications team on the council are really well briefed and that they really understand the position of the council and such, because the local paper and its comments can be really dreadful. So it's and it can end up with endless toing and froing. So there's and that's much. I mean, at the moment it's about the trans toolkit, which is another aspect of work, but it's a big thing. So yeah,
good point. Sarah, so that's a good point. So, I mean, again, I don't know how many elected members we've got on this call, but certainly I know many of you will be liaising with your elected members on this. But you do need that sort of leadership from your local authority, and sort of Lewisham, that is a priority. It's throughout the whole council. That is what we are about. That's what our sanctuary strategy is. So hopefully that's always clear, and I'm always alive to when somebody representing the council misses it for whatever reason we're on it. So absolutely, so to forestall some of this pushback we'd be getting. Okay, has anyone else? I'm just scanning the screens, looking for raised hands, either physical hands going up or these little emojis going up. No, any comments? Oh yeah, Catherine Hogg.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm a new worker. I'm like the Schools of Sanctuary lead in Leeds, and I'm just doing 7 hours. And I'm hearing everything today. It's been really helpful. I think there's so much that I've heard about partnership with the LEAs, which is not really written down as part of my role. But if it were to be, I think, would there be a few points, like your 3 headlines, maybe from those that are in, maybe the speakers that we've heard from today, about how they would find it helpful to work with a Schools of Sanctuary lead. So I'm working as part of Leeds Church Institute. They've taken on this programme, but as I say, it is quite small in terms of the hours that I'm doing. But what would be the main ways that those in those positions in the authorities would find it helpful to work with a Schools of Sanctuary lead?
Okay, looking to our presenters for the different experiences, or Sarah, does anybody want to?
Well, yeah, Natalie has her hand up.
Natalie?
Yeah, just I suppose from my point of view, really, it's just I think first of all, make sure that you're liaising with the right department within the local authority to start with. I think that's pretty key. I mean, obviously, you've got limited capacity. I don't know if you've got any contacts with the LA at the moment, but
not at the moment. No, the City of Sanctuary group in Leeds are doing most of that work, I think.
Yeah. Well, and do you link in with them as well?
I am, but I've only been in the role for like 2 weeks, so I've just had one conversation with them.
Yeah. So obviously linking in with them, and then obviously your equalities or cohesion team, which they will be obviously in Leeds, would probably be the most would be a good service to link in with. But also you will have some sort of school improvement service as well. I know it's all big. I think the problem is now with the local authorities, it's all quite patchy, and with all the cuts and things, teams are much smaller now than they used to be. But I think actually maybe getting into school improvement, whoever's got the responsibility for that, because then they will oversee things like the curriculum, PSHE, what's going into schools, etc. So that they will be probably quite interested. So back in the day, there'd be like a school improvement officer for all subjects. There used to be one for history, one for RE, one thing. Well, now most local authorities is just 1 or 2 people that kind of oversee a lot of it, I believe. So maybe getting onto that side of it, so you're not just hitting it from the cohesion side and the qualities, but it's actually curriculum development.
Yes.
And I think if you could support with curriculum development, or about what suggestions you could have that could go in. And that's how schools, that's why schools, you know, that was me, how I sold Schools of Sanctuary to some of my schools as well. Not just about how important it was, but, you know, but talking about the curriculum, because heads tend to like that as well. I don't know if other people would agree with that on the call.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and I can see Jennifer said hello.
Yeah, you've got a lovely Leeds connection there.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Leeds City Council, that's brilliant, and Sarah's off to speak. So yeah, you've got plenty of willing.
That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, you'll find your way of doing it, the way that works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great, that's really good. Okay, I'm conscious where we are of time now as well, but I mean, I think we've had a very fulsome sort of meeting today. Loads of great examples, different ways it's been happening across the country, and that's what it's about, bringing it all together. I've certainly got lots of food for thought, and I've got loads of notes on, but I'll be going to my teams in Lewisham to sort of get them on it, keep pushing away. So firstly, the two points is before we wrap up. First, I want to obviously thank all the speakers today, and all of you have taken part today, and I hope you've all got something from it. Really, really appreciate it. There's some great stuff happening in our schools, communities across the UK, which is fantastic, and we need to be showcasing that as much as we can, and so City of Sanctuary will be doing that. I don't know, Sarah, is there anything you want to say about next steps for we've got two streams here today, really, so it's this local authority network, but linking with our schools. So what happens next, and resources and things like that.
Yeah, so just thank you everybody who's come today. Thank you to all the speakers, particularly those of you who stepped up fairly last moment to share all your expertise. It's so appreciated. Big thank you to Kevin for really chairing the session so beautifully. Just to say, so we will be sending out the recording, share all the materials, the slides, presentations, as well as a whole slew of resources that we have on our website. I'm very happy to set up with Megan, who's my colleague, some opportunities to chat further. If you want to talk about how you might want to think about bringing it to your council, we can loop in Maggie as appropriate as well, and figure out next steps if you want to engage more as a council. I know we also have some of our City of Sanctuary groups and volunteers here. If you want to talk about strategies for engaging your council, we're very happy to chat about that as well, and we can talk through some steps. But I'd also I'll encourage you, if you want to stay in touch with developments in Schools of Sanctuary, please make sure you signed up to our termly newsletter and our mailing list, and follow us on Twitter, because those are kind of the main ways we're getting out information about upcoming events and things. I'll give a little shout out that we are planning in the coming weeks a session in partnership with Refugee Education UK, which is a fantastic organization with lots of great resources, to specifically talk about supporting new arrivals coming from Afghanistan. And as soon as all the details are available, I think that would be of interest both to those of you working in councils, but also potentially working with on the voluntary side. So there'll be more information about that soon on the website, but we really hope to see you at another event soon. And thanks everyone for coming today.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And yeah, it's been a really, really helpful today, and seeing what's happening, not just in this meeting, but going forward, and see how big this gets in the months and years ahead. And before we sign off, I just want to perhaps hand over to Maggie or Sian, just to sort of give us a kind of sort of view of what's coming up next in the next few months for the local authority network and the things that we're looking at, and very keen for local authorities, reps, elected members and officers and also groups to come along to be part of the things that we are looking in and sharing experiences on. So Sian or Maggie, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Yeah, sure. So we've got an event planned in October that was suggested by the steering group to look specifically at the Afghan resettlement programme, and obviously the changes that were announced yesterday, but also to think about that within the context of the asylum system, which we know is a broken one, and in the context of obviously a very disheartening bill that's been proposed as well. So that event will be coming up in October. The details are not on the events page as yet because we've only just agreed that date, and we're pulling together something quite quickly, but it'll be informal, and I think an opportunity for members of the local authority network to get together and have a conversation. So, and then following that in December, and I can't remember the date off the top of my head, 7th of December is ringing a bell, but we're going to have a celebratory event where we look at the past year of achievements of the local authority network. We'll be reviewing where we are now, also for new members, recapping on the local authority network and the award, celebrating the achievements of those that have gone through the process this year, obviously Kevin and some of our local authorities that were already part of the network but are going through the awards process as well, and then looking forward to kind of planning the year ahead then for the network. So please do encourage your local authorities to join. It's been a great year, I think, you know, from where we started with just a small steering group with now lots of interested local authorities. I think Maggie, bless her, has got sort of 2 inquiries per week. So it's a really exciting time, and the interest, I think, has been phenomenal. So we will look forward to the next few months ahead.
No, thanks. I hope that was a good quick overview for everyone. So, but do stay in touch, look out for the emails, keep in touch with the website. And it's great to see. I mean, every time I see new faces from more local authorities, you know, sanctuary will become the norm in this country. So at all levels, you know, and in all walks of life. So yeah, we'll keep on that journey together. And thank you everyone for your time, particularly the speakers and the organisers today, because a lot of effort does have to go into this. So really appreciate it. And let's hope it turns into more results, particularly for our schools on this occasion, but for everything that we're all trying to do in our community. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.